Welcome to Even Tacos Fall Apart, a podcast dedicated to exploring mental health, resilience, and finding hope in the face of adversity. I'm MommaFoxFire, and in today's episode, we're tackling the topic of kicking the bullshit out of social anxiety. It's worth noting, and very exciting, that this is a recording of the 100th live stream where I was joined by a guest to talk about mental health. If you are ever interested in asking questions while these conversations are held live, feel free to join us every Monday at 8:30 p.m. Central U.S. time on Twitch and check out tacosfallapart.org to see what our next topic will be and find more information on upcoming guests. So back to the subject. Social anxiety can be debilitating, making everyday social interactions feel overwhelming and distressing. But it doesn't have to define who you are or hold you back from living a fulfilling life. In this episode, I'm joined by Lee Vallely as we peek into the world of social anxiety, discussing its causes, symptoms, and the impact it can have on our mental and emotional well-being. We'll also explore practical strategies and techniques to manage and overcome social anxiety, drawing from Lee's professional expertise as well as his personal experiences. Together, we're going to talk through insights, tools, and inspiration to help you reclaim your confidence and thrive in social situations. Whether you are someone who experiences social anxiety or you're interested in understanding and supporting loved ones who do, this episode is for you. I believe that with knowledge, support, and a little bit of determination, it is possible to kick the bullshit out of social anxiety and reclaim your life. So let's dive into this empowering conversation on Even Tacos Fall Apart, because even when they do fall apart, we can rise above our fears and step into a more confident and authentic version of ourselves. Okay, hi everybody. Welcome back to a very special Mental Health Monday. I am very excited that I did some calculations right before this stream and realized this is my 100th guest interview for Mental Health Monday on the Even Tacos Fall Apart show. So I'm really excited to have that, and just like that is a feat in and of itself, I feel like. And I'm also super excited to be joined tonight by Lee Vallely, and we are going to talk about social anxiety and kicking the bullshit out of social anxiety. I am really excited to get into it. So Lee, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Hey, yeah, to be honest, I'm a little anxious.
Well, that's okay. Hopefully within like a few minutes of this, you'll be completely at ease. This is just a conversation. It's all good. So I'll do a little bit about Lee here, and then we'll kind of get into the topic. But before we do that, if you have any questions that you want to ask our guest today, be sure to type into chat !Q, just the letter Q. Follow it with your question, and that'll put it into a question queue. We'll make sure to get it asked while we are here. Bite Merc, welcome to the stream. Thank you for being here today. She's about to give us an example with our first chat question. And while she's typing that in, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Lee with his bio. So from an early age, Lee Vallely was living a lie. Growing up in Birmingham, England, Lee lived in a violent, racist, and volatile environment. Feeling like a fraud, he hid his ethnic background from his peers his entire childhood, which led Lee to believe some very limiting beliefs, that he was a fraud, unworthy, and didn't belong. Some people thought he may be autistic, as he hardly spoke, and that created an insatiable thirst for knowledge, particularly in positive psychology, social energy, and belief busting. Lee became an NLP trainer, health coach, and hypnotherapist, alongside many more certificates in psychology. And he is now a living example of what he teaches. He coaches others to have the best life possible, helping clients eliminate anxiety. And he also has an upcoming book called Kick the BS Out of Social Anxiety, Releasing the Socially Distanced Self. And I do have lots of socials, website, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all that good stuff. And then I have one more. Now, where did that go? Okay, hold on. Because you sent me a link. I put it on the website. So if I don't have it with me here, if you go to tacosfallapart.com, go to the podcast guest page, which is what I'm doing frantically right now to grab the link to the free happiness toolkit, because I think that that's something that's really cool. So here's the last one. Here's that happiness toolkit if you want to download that as well. So Lee, thank you so much for taking the time today. I am super excited to have you. Really excited for our conversation.
Well, me too. And am I allowed to say what you said, which is it's the 100th 100th
Yes.
episode. How cool is that?
I
get to
know.
be the person.
I know, and I wish I could say like I said, like let's wear purple, let's get all excited about it. We're gonna do something really cool, but no, it just happens that we're on the same wavelength here. And if I had known sooner it was going to be the 100th interview, I would have let you know sooner. But I just figured it out literally right before we went live. So
I put my favorite purple shirt on, so we're ready to go.
I love it very much. So our first question in the chat is from Bite Mark, and she asks, "What is your favorite poem?"
Oh, I'm waiting for the social anxiety question. My favorite poem. Wow.
Yeah.
I must admit, I'm not a poem type of person. However, there is one and only that comes to mind, and that's Rumi, which is it's between I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it's like between the borders of right and wrong, there is a field. I'll meet you there. And it's obviously a lot longer than that, but that's the bit that always sticks in my mind. So
I
that's the
love
bit
it.
I can do right now. But Rumi, I mean, of all the books that I've read, that's the one where he has this amazing gift of describing such intelligent and sort of very complex ideas and putting them in such poetic means and so on. So that would be my one.
Oh, I love that. So it looks like it's a pretty short one by Rumi. It's called Out Beyond Ideas. So, and it's out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing. There is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about it. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make sense. I love that. That's awesome. It's
beautiful. Yeah.
That is a beautiful one. We've had a couple people bring up a Rumi poem, and we've had many people who say like, "Hey, poetry isn't my thing," and then we're just like, "That's okay. Songs are poems too. What's your favorite song?"
Oh, darn it!
Hey,
brought up Prince, but never mind.
Oh, hey, you know what? Absolutely. Oh, yes, Purple Rain is a good one by Prince. Also, so there you go. Okay, Bite, thank you so much for that question. I appreciate it. So if anybody has any questions as we're going along about social anxiety, about other things like poems, that's fine too. Just pop them into the chat. We'll get them covered. So Lee, can you tell us a little bit about your experiences and what made you become interested in specializing in mental health in the first place?
Yeah, well, again, it was that upbringing that I had. I was in Birmingham, not Alabama, as we spoke about earlier. So, England, sort of Peaky Blinders country, if you've ever seen that crazy show. And that was sort of, not Peaky Blinders, but that was sort of my upbringing. It was very violent and very volatile area in the area that I was in. And yeah, as a consequence, I mean, I had very limiting beliefs. And as I said, I lived a lie. I mean, it was a very racist area. And my grandfather was from Bangladesh. And so my mom was a half Bengali, which made me a quarter. I've got like that much. But as you can see, I got the suntan, which now I love. But at the time it was not a good thing. And there was a lot of racism against people that came from Bangladesh and Pakistan and so on. And on top of that, I had a stepdad and there was a lot of conflict there and so on. He was very good, but he was just a tough guy. And so I created these real limiting beliefs, and so much so that I couldn't speak. I mean, people literally thought I was autistic. I had a person say to me, I was very scared of. They said, I was that annoying kid, I was asking a million questions. What's this? What's that? Why is the sky blue? And I've not answered that one, actually. I got to look that up on Google. Why is the sky blue? But I was annoying. I understand that. But what he said just stopped me in my tracks. He shouted at me and said, You don't have anything important to say, don't say it. And I went, zip. Because you think about that statement, right? If you don't have anything important to say, don't say it. And even as an adult, how do you work out what's important or not? But as a kid, it completely messed up my mind because I just couldn't work out what was good and what was not good and what was. So I doubted absolutely everything that I said. Now, that's the negative side. But what it gave me was an absolute thirst. It was like I had an insatiable thirst for knowledge, particularly in psychology and then eventually into positive psychology and NLP and so on. And that's what led me into it. As a consequence, I just love it now. I love learning more and more about this subject, and not just social anxiety, but all types. My real focus is actually on the good stuff, like how to be happy, how to be in peace, how to be comfortable in your own skin. And that's where it led me, and I just keep going. I just love it.
Yeah. I love that because it's so often whenever we ask people this question, it's like it's either something really good happened or something really bad happened, and it kind of led you to wanting to change the world or to find answers for yourself. And it sounds like it was very much a combination for you, which I think is great. And I can't imagine, I've got a 9-year-old and a 16-year-old. I can't imagine telling either one of them, if you don't have something important to say, don't say anything at all. Like,
right.
And they say the craziest things because they've never been, limited like that. So,
which is great because they can be themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you mentioned NLP, and I think I mentioned that in the bio as well. What does that stand for?
Oh, it's neuro-linguistic programming. It's a big mouthful. That's why NLP is so much better.
Absolutely.
But it's linguistic. So if you think neuro, of course, the mind, linguistic, so how we speak, programming. So we speak to our mind, and our mind speaks to us, of course, but we can do this deliberately. So that's NLP. Neuro-linguistic programming, yeah.
Yeah, just wanted to get that out there in case anybody wasn't familiar with it and make sure that I had the right NLP in my mind also. I work in a very acronym-heavy world, and I just switched from working predominantly with the Air Force to predominantly with the Navy, and boy, can I tell you that the Navy loves their freaking acronyms. Like everything is an acronym. It's insane to the point where a lot of the folks on the government side don't know what the acronyms mean when you ask them. So you have to, it's a lot. It's a lot. There's a lot of acronyms. So now that you're working in the mental health field, what is your favorite thing about working in that field? And what are some of the biggest challenges?
Well, my favorite thing is literally, as I say, this is not only my occupation, my career, but it's also my hobby. Yeah. I mean, my wife and I, we talk about this stuff all the time. We're annoying, It's if you ever see me on a break or in my time off, I'm reading a book or I'm listening to something. We just went on a cruise, which is an educational cruise.
Hey,
that's it. I live it and breathe it. Now, I guess the drawbacks is going against the grain somewhat, because what I've found is not necessarily, stereotypical. It's not necessarily, people will tend to have some problems with where I go with certain parts to what I found is true. And I like to speak my truth. Mm-hmm. That can be a problem sometimes. Obviously, having said that, it's also getting people, and I'm generalizing, of course, but getting people to get out of their story, because the story that we tell is so powerful. I mean, even though we know sort of intellectually, well, obviously that's not really true. And sometimes we do believe it's true. But for the most part, I think most people understand that it's not really true. And yet experientially, it's so difficult for us to break free of that. So that's probably the toughest part. And, I've found ways of being able to get people away from that. So that's where the shit comes in.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's very true. And it's the same thing with a lot of different aspects of life. Like, you can logically know that something is one way, and it can be so hard to convince either your heart or your body to follow suit, or for you to act on that thing that you logically know is correct. It can be really tough to override your instinct and override your immediate reaction, which is typically driven by what you grew up with. So,
right. And the key to that is understanding, and again, this is the tough part, understanding that we can get it intellectually. So neuro-linguistic programming is going toward the mind. However, in our hearts, we have 40,000 neurosensors, right? The heart actually thinks. And it makes so much sense, doesn't it? When we think about being emotional, my heart's not in it, you've broken my heart. We sort of know that. We have a sense of that.
Yeah.
But to break anything really is experiential, not intellectual. Intellectual will not break it because we have this thermostat in our system, and the thermostat is in our heart, or thereabouts.
I love that. I think it's important to recognize that. And they say, like, you have like at least 3 brains in your body, not including like thinking with what's in your pants, which I think probably should be a 4th one. But you got your head brain, your heart brain, and your gut brain. And so there's just all those things kind of come together, which is really neat. But it makes it hard to work with, because it's not just one thing that you have to convince. It's not just one thing you have to work with. You have to work with everything. So,
well, I mean, sorry to be devil's advocate.
No, go ahead.
Actually, it is, because here's the thing: is like I said, we've got 40,000 neurosensors in our heart, and here's the thing: is our heart talks to our brain 10 times more than our brain talks to our heart. So if you think about that, I mean, if you have 2 people and one person's talking to the other person 10 times more than the other person, who do you think is in charge?
Yeah.
So this is a good thing, because now we know who to speak to, if you like, and who to listen to also.
Yeah, that's a great point. Hey, Growling, welcome to the stream tonight. Appreciate you being here. If you have any questions about social anxiety, feel free to drop them into the chat. I'll make sure to get them asked here, and we'll go over them. So, do you have a serial killer or a true crime story that fascinates you?
Yeah, a serial killer. Well, I have been fascinated, and it's sort of like I kept it pretty quiet. I've been fascinated by serial killers because it's hard. Again, it's so hard for us to even logically understand how somebody can be so heartless to literally just have no feeling in that sense, And because I'm fascinated in psychology, I have, studied Ted Bundy, and I'm trying to think of the other names now, but it's more that it's just a fascination in that. And I'm also very keen on energy. And there's a guy called David Hawkins. Now, it's not Stephen Hawkins. People get him mixed up with Stephen Hawkins. But David Hawkins was the original guy who measured, how he measures this, don't ask me, but he measured energy levels of people, places, and things. So he was the one that was part of that meditation that they did in Washington, D.C. I think it was in the early 90s. And it was phenomenal because people meditated, a couple of thousand people meditated, and they measured. By the way, it was the murder capital of I don't know if it was the world or the US at the time. And they measured the frequency, and the frequency went up. So the energy level went up.
Wow.
What was incredible, this was the entire state of Washington. So what was incredible about that was that the crime rate in that moment, in that time that they were doing it, dropped by around 20%, which was absolutely unheard of. It was just crazy. And I don't know how they did this. I'm not, but I was just fascinated by that. Now, the reason I tell you that is because serial killers come up at a level of 40. Now, truth, integrity is at 200.
Oh, okay.
40 is at the level of a viper snake. So that's the kind of energy level. Now, when you think about that, it makes sense how energetically, how their mind is working. They're working in a predatory way. So that was a long-winded answer to which serial killer I'm interested in. But hey,
well, I mean, I haven't heard of that before, the energy levels and David Hawkins and this thing that he did. So I'm going to have to do more looking into that for sure, because that's new to me. That's really cool. I just always think it's really interesting just to think about, put your mind in the brain of someone who's truly like broken. Like if you're a serial killer, there's something in you that I feel like is fundamentally broken. And so on the one hand, it's like everybody has things that they're fascinated with. I grew up, we were just talking about this weekend also. I grew up watching all of these crime shows with my grandparents, and my grandfather was a mortician in addition to being a preacher. And so like my fascination is fairly natural. But it's interesting how many people do have that fascination, and it just doesn't really get talked about very much. So I like to bring it up.
I talk about energy levels, and it's interesting that when I'm not in a good energy place, if I'm sort of a low energy, I'll go and watch a serial killer. I mean, all that does is makes my energy even less, I think. I'm not, prone to go out and be a serial killer, but my energy level drops by watching those sorts of programs.
Yeah.
So it's funny how we do the worst thing at the worst time, by going watching these programs.
I mean, I don't know. It seems to me like maybe, and I have no scientific backing for this. This is just me spitballing as I love to do. But like, it seems to me if I'm in a sad mood, if we take it away from serial killers, if I'm in a sad mood and I want to go watch a sad movie, it's like you're just picking the thing that resonates with you at that moment. So maybe if you are low energy, you are picking something with a low energy main character just because it resonates with you a little bit.
Yeah, that's the key word, resonates. Yeah, absolutely.
So our topic tonight is social anxiety, and I'm excited to get into it. So kind of baseline here, can you define what social anxiety disorder is for people who may not be familiar with it? How common is it? What are some of the most common symptoms, etc.?
Yeah, well, social anxiety disorder it's the third most common mental disorder, and it's one of those. It's over 12% have a diagnosis, as in they've suffered from it. But of course, as we know, most people won't be necessarily diagnosed. And what's interesting about it is, although I'm talking about social anxiety disorder, which is basically a phobia. It's an intense fear of social interactions, but mainly it's the intense fear of being rejected, of being embarrassed, and of a different sort of. It's like being judged. That's the word. I couldn't think of the word. It's like being judged is the main part of that stops people. But whereas perhaps the like you and I say you and I, but I was suffering from this, we wouldn't like being judged, and I still don't like being judged, but I don't have an absolute, overwhelming fear of that judgment anymore. What's interesting though is most of us suffer from a form of that social interaction, that fear of being rejected or judged, and it comes across because almost every one of us have suffered from that, at some point in time. It feels like it's a natural fear, but it's absolutely learned behavior. It's learned behavior through generation to generation to generation, to the point of going back to the sort of caveman days where, we're going after our food and running away in case we are food, It goes back to that, because if you are kicked out of the social, the tribe, you wouldn't last the night because you'd be eaten, But still, it's learned behavior through generation to generation. And so this is why it's so important to understand what it is, because most people think that it's normal. They think, oh, well, it's one of those things. And yet it can be so debilitating. It can prevent you from having the life that you want.
Yeah.
What my predominant part of that is, in the book, is to get people to be comfortable in their skin. So as a consequence, again, you're not going to like being judged. You're not going to like being, rejected or whatever. But it's not going to change your life. And it's not going to change your life in the fact in advance, where you do things so that you do not get rejected. Like, for instance, I could not have done this interview, even maybe 8 years ago, 9 years ago, even though I've been doing this stuff for a long time. It was only the last few years where I really understood this, the thermostat that I talked about. My thermostat literally changed. Previous to that, I was very good at faking it till you make it, right? I was very good at putting a good face on, and people wouldn't necessarily think that I was socially anxious. And this is a big part of it too, is a lot of people think that you're going to be shy or you're going to avoid all social situations, and it's not necessarily true. A lot of people have social fear and social anxiety, and I'm from Britain, so I'd say they can talk for Britain, they're blah, 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 blah. And then you get others like me who just froze. I wouldn't be able to put a sentence together,
Yeah.
It hits people in different ways, but the overriding thing is that fear of rejection, fear of being embarrassed, fear of that judgment in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And you can definitely look, you say fake it till you make it. Look, at one point, still a little bit, I was terrified of public speaking. I don't consider this public speaking because it's like I'm talking to one person, even though there's other people watching. Like I'm talking to you, Lee, I'm only talking to you right now. Of course, there are other people watching, but it doesn't bother me like it does. Now, when I get up, and I've gotten up and talked in front of colleges before, and it's one of those things where like my heart is freaking pounding. And if I could back out of it at the last minute, I absolutely would, still to this day. But it's one of those things, I just push through it. But not everybody can do that. Not everybody can push through it. So
yeah, and you bring up a really poignant point there, because I don't teach people to push through it. And again, like I said, some of my ideas are controversial, but I know that I pushed through it, quote unquote, and jumped in the deep end and drowned many times. I was revived and I drowned again, because I thought that's what you had to do. And that's what we're taught to do, isn't it? Pull your big boy pants up and get out there and do it,
Yeah.
And it wasn't the case for me. I'm not saying that's for everyone. Some people can do it that way. I've just found from me and from all the clients that I've worked with and all the people that I've talked with and learned from, that incremental changes is the key. So rather than throwing yourself in the deep end, saying, I did that. I did that all the time when I was 16, and I couldn't say boo to a ghost. I don't know what that means. But anyway, I was scared of my own shadow. I was terrible. So what did I do? I went as a door-to-door salesman. Go figure.
That's
The worst possible door-to-door salesperson on the planet ever. I made one sale, and I lasted 3 months, by the way. That was it. 3 months.
Yeah.
I made one sale, and the sale was the funniest thing. I was talking, and this lady come to the door, and I'm talking to her, and I can see she wants to say something, but I had my talk. So I just kept going. And finally, she said, okay, listen, I do want this. So it was in spite of, not because of.
Yeah.
I lasted 3 months, and every morning I woke up with absolute dread, you know. And all I can say is it didn't help. It made it worse. It made me feel worse instead of better. But when I started doing incremental changes and noticing what was happening, where my feelings were coming from, as opposed to what's going on outside of me, and just judging accordingly. When I say judging, I should say noticing, because the judging is the problem. Noticing. It made all the difference in the world.
I love that. So in your experience, what are some of the common misconceptions about social anxiety? I think we've already hit on a couple of them here, but what are maybe some of the most common ones?
Well, the biggest one, and like I said earlier, is that the story that we're broken, that, you know, I mean, I thought that for decades, that I was broken. There's no, sounds ridiculous, but I thought there's no hope for me. How could there be? Because I've gone through all of the psychology that I could possibly go through, and all the therapy, and I've in my eyes, I worked with the best, you know. I worked for Tony Robbins. I was up there. I was on stage talking to thousands of people. But I would run off stage just in case anybody wanted to speak to me afterwards.
Oh.
You see, that's the fake it till you make it type. So that's a misconception. As I said before as well, the other thing is that people think that people with social anxiety are shy. But a lot of actors are socially anxious, a lot of actors. And it makes sense because they can, perform as a different person.
Right.
I heard that Beyonce has a sort of alter ego when she goes on stage, and she's actually quite introverted. So
interesting.
That's a big misconception, that people, you will see them and you will know, oh, they're obviously socially anxious or something like that. And the other part is that, again, pushing people into the deep end. If you're socially anxious, the only way to get through it is to do it. And that's true, but there was a beautiful, phenomenal book, I got to remember the name of it, The Rise of Superman, that's what it was. And what he talked about was all these, I can't remember the author now, but what he talked about was all these top athletes and so on. He looked at the different areas and the different success levels of different people in all different areas, predominantly the athletes though, because they were very measurable. And what he found was, as you might guess, it's like an athlete, they break the world record. Well, they don't break the world record every time they work out. That would be crazy, and they would be dead, exhausted, What they would work on is a 4% increase. And what I found is this works with any anxiety, particularly social anxiety. So the misconception is, grow 100%. Get out on stage. You'll never fear another, big social event again. Well, I'm living proof that didn't work. But what I would do is maybe go to, and it sounds ridiculous now, but maybe go to a coffee shop and just feel how I was feeling. That's the key, is feel the feelings. And then, if I felt uncomfortable, and I did sometimes, I would leave. And that was it for that day. And then maybe another day, or maybe later on that day, I would go back to the coffee shop and keep going until I felt a little comfortable. And that was my 4%. Now, to somebody else, they go to a coffee shop all the time. They can do that. But the next thing is something else and something else and something else. And so that makes all the difference to go those incremental steps. The misconception tends to be to push people a little bit too far past their comfort zone. And that's what I find.
Yeah. So that book is The Rise of Superman, Decoding the Science of Ultimate Human Performance by Stephen Kotler. So if anybody's interested in adding that to their want to read shelf, like I am doing right now on Goodreads, you're welcome to do so. But yeah, I mean, Bitemark's pointing out in the chat that Bo Burnham has social anxiety, and it's like there's a stage persona and the real person behind it. Yes, absolutely. I think that's completely valid. And it's one of those things that, you can't act a certain way when you're performing, you are performing. And so I think a lot of people don't recognize that about celebrities, is that their performance is not necessarily their person. Right. But yeah, it's one of those things that, sure, somebody could look at someone and maybe you can see that they have social anxiety, but it's through their actions. And then sometimes you can't see it at all. It's just not visible. Like a lot of mental illnesses aren't visible.
Right. Robert De Niro is another one. He's very shy person. I don't know if he's socially anxious, but I know he's quite a shy person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did the pandemic make social anxiety worse or more prevalent? And how has that changed since the pandemic? Sorry,
I interrupted you.
Oh, it's all good.
No, of course it didn't. Didn't do a thing. No. No, of course it did have a major effect, and the major effect actually was quite surprising, but not surprising. I know that doesn't really make sense, but it was surprising in the fact that, again, I'm speaking generally, but a lot of us actually lost the art of conversation. You know, we sort of lost our bearings of the normal social interaction. And like I said, that makes no sense. It was only like, a short time in the big scheme of things. Yet it was amazing how people, they did start to feel uncomfortable. And it's that, use it or lose it type thing. Me, of course, being a bit of an introvert, I quite enjoyed it, but obviously to a point, but still found that when I wasn't interacting with people, it did make a big difference. And then after, I don't know if we're after, but, after the main sort of lockdown, I think what happened is people started they're finding their feet. So what was good in a sense is I noticed that lots of people went on vacation and they went, they started interacting as much as possible. And then what happened was a bit of a divide, I don't think we've ever seen before. There was such a divide. It seemed like everything was a divide. It was like how we think, and what we think of, COVID, and what we think of politics, and all these things that before we'd think, you're talking rubbish or something. Now it's like, oh, I don't want to be your friend, So I think that was quite a shock in that sense. So yes, the social anxiety certainly skyrocketed after that. And yeah, it was quite a shock, actually, beyond the normality of it, that people would obviously, feel that shock when they go back into society. But it was quite surprising how much of a shock it was for people, how much that anxiety rose. It wasn't always social anxiety, but it was a form of, and it came to that anxiety level. It's pretty shocking in that sense. On the plus side, because I always like to put the plus side, I think that people, whereas maybe we took it for granted, really appreciate it now. And although this is beautiful, being able to talk like you're in one part of the country, I'm in the other. This is phenomenal, isn't it? Especially over the lockdown, it was absolutely invaluable. And people are starting to really appreciate and crave that physical social interaction. I think that's a good thing. What I found over the period was, first of all, I wrote the book. So that was one good thing for me. But second of all, here's another book for you. Julia Cameron. This is quite an old book now. This was from the 90s. And it was it The Art of Writing? Yeah, The Art of Writing. But it really took me by surprise because there were two little exercises in there. And the first one was to journal and journal 3 pages a day. Now, I'm not a journaler. I am now after that, but I never was a journaler previous. And I read the book, so I thought, okay, I'll go for it. That was great, and I still do that to this day. And it's almost like a cleansing. It's like a therapeutic session. I just write down what I'm feeling in that moment. Really made a difference, and that helped me write the book. The other part was, initially it was 24 hours, but it went on to like 3 or 4 days, I think it was, where you did nothing. Now, this was tough. We were in lockdown, but I still did it. You did nothing. So you watched no TV, no games, right? No books, no listening to audio. You just sat with yourself.
That would be really difficult for me.
Oh boy, that was taught. Now for me, entertainment wise, I can go without TV. It's not really a problem.
Oh yeah.
But the reading and the listening, oh my gosh, I have not had a day, well, up until that point, I had not had a day since the age of 14, I think, where I had not read a book or at least listened to a book or listened to something educational, something non-fictional.
Yep.
I'd just not done that. That was my thing, Oh boy, did I feel that.
Yeah.
What I found, there were so many insights to that. The first one was, I'm here in Florida, and I'm going to be all sophisticated now. We've got the Ave, right, in Delray Beach. And I actually decided, this was just after when we could start walking and, going out. I actually wanted to go out and walk on Delray Beach, on the Ave. And I was actually interacting with people. Now, I would never have done that. There's no way. I haven't got time for that. I got to read this book, or, I've got to watch this series or something like that, And I found myself doing that. And that was one phenomenal insight. It gave me that feeling to go and socialize. But also, what I realized was, it's very strange. I realized I was watching things. Now, hear me out. I'm from England, so I'm a little bit behind the times. I got into Seinfeld. What is it, 20, maybe 30 years too late? I don't know what it is. But anyway, it wasn't that popular in England. I didn't. So I started watching it, and now everything's a Seinfeld episode, 20 years too late. But now I'm quoting Seinfeld for everything. But what I found was that I was living my social life through these series, through the movies, through the TV, in that sense. Now, it sounds crazy. It sounded crazy at the time, but it was a real insight. I was actually feeding my social muscle, or whatever it is, through the TV. It's almost like, have you ever thought like, oh, if I ever meet that person, it'd be almost like we know each other, You don't think that really, but there's a sort of little part of you that thinks you'll know them or something like that. And what I found was that's what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Once I realized that, and not intellectually, but really had that insight and realized what was going on, all of a sudden, it almost like it burst the bubble.
Mm.
And I started understanding that it's no good just reading the books. It's no good just going to the seminars. That's academic. It's in actually going and socializing, having a conversation with somebody and just saying hello, you know. That might have been my 4%. It was a lot of the times just to say hello to somebody. I used to ask them the time. That was the good one, but you can't now because everybody's got a phone and everything.
Right.
You're looking at the time. What are you talking about?
Yeah. I couldn't sit. So I'm fine. No reading or no TV, no listening to audio, no games, whatever. That's all fine. No reading.
Yeah.
Like I read every day. It's part of how I go to sleep. I read every night. It's what I do. And I could not, I think I would absolutely, like Bite is saying, I think I would be climbing the walls as well. Yeah. But you never know. Maybe doing something like that, people take a vow of silence for like a year. I wouldn't survive that either, but
yeah. But it's really interesting. It's almost like, going off coffee or something. At first it's quite hard going, but after a while it's quite enlightening actually. It's quite insightful.
And is that exercise also from that same book as the journaling exercise?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was 2 exercises that I got from it.
Okay.
And that was before I finished the book, obviously, because I couldn't read. So, but
good point. What kind of business model is this?
Right. But it was very, very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. And I mean, even if you just did that for a couple of hours or something, I've done that sometimes, just stopped everything. It's amazing what a difference it makes.
Mm-hmm. Now, could you like write? Is journaling allowed?
Sorry. Yes, you could journal. You could journal, but you didn't want to overdo it. Really, you just wanted to sit with self and just. It's a really hard thing.
Yeah.
It could be easy, but it's a really hard thing to just sit with yourself. We're always trying to entertain ourselves in some way, shape, or form. So it's really eye-opening to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And we're talking about social anxiety, right? And again, this is a misconception in a sense that I teach people to go within. Mm-hmm. Well, people with social anxiety or introverted people, they live inside, But unfortunately, what we tend to do, and include myself obviously, is we go inside all right, yeah. And we go inside and judge the hell out of ourselves. Mm-hmm. So that's not what I'm talking about in Go Within. They say that your soul, the door of the soul opens inwardly. Mm. And if you think about any government building or anything like that, like a theater or something like that, all the doors will open outwardly. Because if there's anything, the fire bells go off or something like that, people will panic and they will literally lock themselves in without realizing. So that's why the doors open outwardly.
Yeah.
We're so used to looking outside of ourselves. But the beauty of that is you have no choice to sort of go within. Now, it might not be nice initially. After a while, and certainly when you do certain exercises, giving up judgment, giving up that, that constant stress and strain that we've been taught to, unwittingly maybe, but we've been taught to stress and strive and strain in life. Mm-hmm. Actually, life is a lot easier than we think. Yeah. So when we go within with that little exercise or any sort of exercise, and take away judgment, now all of a sudden we drop into meditation. And in meditation, most people think of meditation as sitting going om or whatever, or quietening the mind. I got news for you. You cannot quieten the mind. Mm-hmm. You cannot do it. Even the top monks, Tibetan monks who have been measured, incredible gifts that they have, they cannot quieten the mind. Now, hear me out. I should rephrase that. They do quieten. They cannot make the mind quiet, I should say. That's probably more accurate. Of course, it does get quieter, but it never stops. The only time our thinking stops is when we're not here anymore. That's the only time.
Yeah.
So even these Tibetan monks or these really high energy or highly professional meditators cannot stop thinking. What they can do is stop connecting to the thinking. That's the
Just
big
let it pass through. Yeah. That's one of those things that I've tried meditating where it's just the being silent, and it's not for me because I just wind up in some sort of crazy thought spiral. But the thing that people would always repeat was like, just notice that there is a thought, say thank you for being here, and then just let it go and move on to the next. And it wasn't just try not to think about anything, because if you try not to think about anything, then you're thinking about not thinking about the things. So
right, yeah. I get a phrase that I always say: you cannot not think about the thing that you don't want to think about without actually thinking about the thing that you don't want to think about first. I mean, think about it.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And it's one of those things. Well, that book is The Right to Write, an invitation and initiation into the writing life by Julia Cameron, I think is the book that you're referring to. So if anybody's interested in that one. We have a really great question in the chat by Droid. This actually ties into a question that I was going to ask anyway, so we're going to ask it now. And that question is, how do you deal with other social anxiety when you don't have social anxiety? My sister has it, and I try to get her to interact with her friends more often, etc. Am I helping or harming? Thank you, Droid. Great question.
That is a great question. Yeah. That's the $1 million question. And again, it's very personal. So it's very subjective, I find. And that is where that limit is. So the one thing for absolutely sure is to treat people as normal. The last thing you want to do is start drawing to attention the fact that, did you say your sister? What was it?
Yeah, it sounds like they're talking about their sister. Yeah.
Yeah. That she doesn't want to feel abnormal. And sometimes we're doing okay, even if you might think, oh, they might be socially anxious, or we might be doing okay. It might be that 4% in that moment. So the last thing we want to do, of course, is draw attention to it. Now, how far you go with that is dependent on the person. So I would suggest having that conversation. Do you feel comfortable maybe doing this or doing that? But have it as a conversation, not, oh, listen, I know you're socially, just have it as a conversation. And you can work wonders, because having you as that ally makes all the difference. The worst thing of all is having to go to a place by yourself when you're feeling socially anxious. Just having somebody there can make all the difference, all the difference in the world. And then introducing without walking away. I used to go to like network meetings, and I'm doing my fake it till I make it sort of thing. I'm walking in with a person, and they go, oh, do you know so-and-so? So this is Lee. And then they'd walk off. Now, it somewhat was okay, but that felt really uncomfortable. If they'd have just stayed around for a little bit, I'd have had that sort of, that little bit of support. And then if they gradually just said, oh, I'm just going to be over there or whatever, I'd have felt fine. But just leaving me like that was a little bit too much.
Yeah.
As I say, again, it's subjective. So it's working with her and just noticing and speaking with her, interacting where she feels comfortable, where she feels, can she just go that little bit more? So yeah, it's helping without pushing someone in the deep end, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is a fantastic question because, I go through that obviously with other people too, because I'm working with people with that, seeing how far we can go.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things, asking someone how you can help them instead of just saying, hey, have you tried this? It will change the whole conversation that you're having. If I ask my kids, how was school, and they bring up something that they're having a problem with their teacher, and then I immediately either give them some sort of suggestion or I contact the teacher right away, that takes their choice away and their input away. Where if my kid comes to me with a problem that they're having with the teacher because I've asked them, how was your day? They talk about this problem they're having, and I say, hey, do you want me to just listen to you? Do you want me to contact the teacher? Do you want me to help you contact the teacher? What do you want me to do right now with you? It empowers them to make that choice. And so that's probably my best example is with my kids. But also, if you're out with somebody who doesn't like to ask the waitress for ketchup, you can say, hey, do you want me to get the waitress or do you want me to ask for ketchup for you? Give them a choice and let them decide, because then it's helping. You're not taking them out of the situation. You're still having them in the decision seat, kind of. So Joy said, here's the follow-up. The way I usually do is we play games online with them. I am part of that with a shared friend pool. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like, so your sister is social anxious. You're also there with her. So you are a part of it and you can kind of help her there. And you're encouraging her. Let me go back and see here. So I think you said, I try to get her to interact with her friends more. Maybe just send her a note on the side and ask her how she's feeling, how her energy level is today. Lee, I don't know if you have any other suggestions for that.
No, and I think you're doing great in that sense, because you're obviously, pointing her in the right direction. And so, yeah, it's just bearing that in mind, it's like where we think, okay, let's move to the next level, and not realizing that her level is probably a lot different, but by the sounds of it, you are quite aware of that, and that's really good. So I think that's a great idea, doing those social interaction games. Fantastic.
And I would just add, follow up with her later and say, hey, how was that for you? Was I being helpful? Do you want me to do anything differently next time? And that as long as you're communicating, look, I'm of the strong opinion that almost everything comes back to communication, whether it's with yourself or your partner or your kids or the people around you. Almost everything comes back to communication. So talk with her afterwards and just ask her, do you want me to do anything different next time?
Yeah. And kudos to you, for doing that and being there. You're a lifesaver in that sense. It makes such a difference when you've got that kind of support.
Mm-hmm. Yes, your sissy. I don't know what a sissy is, but your sister's very lucky to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So we talked about the 4% improvement and all of that kind of thing, but how can someone with social anxiety build their confidence and self-esteem? How do they get that 4% better every time? You talked about going to like a coffee shop. Are there other ways to do that? Yeah,
and you brought up at one point that I forgot to mention in the misconceptions, because this is a really important one, and, as I like to be, a very controversial one too. And that is that we do not need to build our self-esteem. We can build our confidence. Our confidence is based on skills, right? So I'm not very confident at being a brain surgeon. I would need to work and get some competence before I felt confident to be a brain surgeon. Oh yes, in terms of confidence, it's about competence. It's about working toward that and building that competence, which will give you the confidence in whatever area it is. Self-esteem is a given. So this goes back to, my crazy book title, right? Because here's my philosophy, if you like. This is how the book is based. And the book is based on I heard this analogy, and I think it's absolutely perfect. I heard it from a person called Michael Neal, and he's written many books, all bestsellers. And what was Inside Out Revolution is a really good book. And he spoke about a simple little concept. And I heard this way back when in NLP days, back in, I don't know, 2000 or something. But now it becomes relevant to the social anxiety part. And what he said was that we are a diamond in the rough. I mean, we've all heard of that. It's quite a common saying, oh, that person's a diamond in the rough, But we are a diamond. Now, this is metaphorical. Because I once said, a diamond cannot be broken. And somebody said, yes, it can. But metaphorically, diamond is the perfect shape. It's that diamond. It cannot be broken. It cannot be destroyed. It cannot be tarnished. It is absolutely perfectly as it is. That is us. We are perfectly us. Now, diamonds, even though it's the diamond, we know it as that shape. The diamond comes in all different shapes, right? But it's still perfect. It's perfectly shaped as it is, right? But there's a problem because our diamond is covered in shit. Excuse my French that I'm using.
It's all good here.
It's covered in shit, right? It's totally covered in shit. What's the shit? It's the limiting beliefs. It's the doubts. It's the fears. It's the phobias. It's the different things that we've been told as kids, predominantly as kids, because we were like sponges from the year 0 to 7, just taking in information like crazy, this big funnel of information and trying to fit things together. And this is how we create these beliefs. Now, the beliefs might have served us, 0 to 7, but not necessarily now. So this is how we create these shit beliefs, right? And all sorts of stuff, starting to feel that we are unworthy because we believe in the beliefs. So we no longer see our diamond. We no longer see that anymore. All we see is this shit that's covered around. And we start to believe that these beliefs are us. We believe in our persona. Our personality is completely and utterly made up. Now, does it define us? Yeah, of course. We if we didn't have a personality, we couldn't, be in the world. But it's not us. It's our personality, right? But unfortunately, it's created by the shit. But what we do is we don't like wandering around with our shit hanging out. So we paint an imitation diamond around our shit. Now, what's the paint? It can be all sorts of things. Now, here's the little caveat here. I'm not saying that these things that I talk about are wrong necessarily. It's just that they could be for the wrong reasons. You see, a lot of people know that they're the diamond and still do these things. Mm-hmm. That's okay because they're doing them for fun. They're doing them for recreation or whatever. They're doing them because they like it, But if you're doing it to paint over what you think is you, which is your shit, to hide your shit, and it's for the wrong reasons. So what's the paint? Amazingly, motivational speeches. Told you it's controversial. If you're doing it for the wrong reasons, a motivational speech, I listen to them all the time. I'm not listening to them to build my self-esteem. I'm listening to them maybe to lift my energy, make me feel good, but not to lift my self-esteem. Mm-hmm. Self-esteem is intact. I'm comfortable in my own skin. Might not be comfortable in a situation, but I'm comfortable in my own skin. Mm-hmm. So motivational talks, motivational type things, they're bodybuilding. Again, if it's for the wrong reasons, wearing certain clothes to stand out, purple shirts. clothes to stand out, having your lips looking like a baboon's ass, it's like that. Having flotation devices put on your body, all sorts of things that aren't necessarily wrong. Hear me out. But if you're doing them because you think that you're the shit, then it becomes a problem. Let me take a selfie on Facebook. Let me tell the world what's going on in my world and try and make it look like I'm having fun when inside I'm dying, All of these things are painting over what we truly feel. So when we realize that we're the diamond, we find that we don't need so much paint. And what happens is this shit is an illusion and it starts to dissipate. It doesn't, we take a big dump and we start eliminating this stuff. It comes back. It will come back because we're in the world. We hear all these different things and people will judge us and stuff like that. So it will come back. But you know what you do? You take another dump because you constantly remind yourself. You constantly go back to being that diamond. Mm-hmm. Like, when we can be socially anxious and yet still know that we're the diamond. Mm-hmm. And then eventually that social anxiety, it starts to wither away.
Yeah. So if you have social anxiety, how do you recognize that you are that diamond? Like, what are some steps that you can take to recognize that is you under there?
Well, the first thing is to think, is it true? Mm. Because this is the beauty of this. It's not intellectual. Like I said, we cannot change this feeling intellectually. But when we feel it experientially, that's when it comes. So we want to go to the heart. So the first place to go is to start heart breathing. Now, we can't physically breathe into the heart, but you imagine. So a great thing to do is to place your hands on your heart, so in just center of your chest type thing, and just breathe. So you breathe into your heart. And you notice, just as I'm saying that, you tend to have a calmer feel about that. You might not even be doing it, but you feel a little bit calmer. Mm-hmm. You breathe into your heart. The other part to that, and you said about different ideas, and a brilliant idea to get you out of anxiety in advance is become a nose breather. Just breathing in and out through the nose. So the reason for that is, what is anxiety? It's a persistent feeling of fear. Now, fear that's a controversial word as well, but it's a constant feeling of worry, anxiety, and so on, is creating this fight or flight response. Mm-hmm. But what it's doing is, the fight or flight response is an emergency response. It's built into our system so that if we're walking across a road and a big double-decker bus is coming, we go, wah! And we get out of the way, right? Our body moves before we're thinking, oh, shall I get out of the way? If you're thinking, shall I get out of the way? You are now
too late.
pancake on the floor. Yeah. So your body has this emergency system and it gets you out of the way. All the blood pumps to your extremities. Your heart's going like crazy. Your adrenaline's pumping. All these sorts of, it's called the sympathetic nervous system. Mm-hmm. So it's like the everything's going like crazy. All the filing cabinets in your mind get shut down, so you can't even remember your name at this point. You're just like, you've got to get out of there. Well, that's good when you got to get away from a bus.
Yeah.
When you're walking into a social event, not a good idea to get into that state. Well, the nose breathing, when we are anxious, you'll notice that we hyperventilate. So what do? We're taking in as much oxygen as we possibly can, not realizing we're blowing it out even quicker, and we're not actually taking in any oxygen. Mm-hmm. But we're trying to get as much oxygen in as possible. So we breathe through our mouth. So it's that sort of chicken or the egg, it's a knee-jerk reaction. We start breathing through our mouth. This activates the fight or flight.
Yeah.
Now, the fight or flight can activate us to do it, or it can do, so it's sort of that back and forth. Now, when we tend to breathe through our mouths without realizing, we're unconsciously activating fight or flight. When we breathe through the nose, we're giving the brain a signal that everything's okay. So, breathe in and out through the nose. Now, if you have a cold, it's probably a problem. You might,
That's so different.
But we breathe in and out through the nose. And what will happen is you'll start to go into that, what's called parasympathetic, which is basically your restive digestive system. It's your meditation system. You almost go into a meditative state just by breathing in and out through your nose. Now, of course, you can still act and, you won't be like nodding off to sleep, but that's the first thing. Then you breathe through the heart. So you're breathing in and out through the nose, and imagine breathing into the heart. That will slow everything down. And that's when you can start to experience your diamond. Because you'll start to experience who you truly are. You'll be comfortable in your skin. Now, don't do this in the height of a social event when you're feeling anxious, because you got to practice this like anything else. But you practice it like riding a bike. So unlike an academic skill where you try and figure it out mentally and so on, and you try and remember the names and things like that, you cannot read a book and ride a bike. It's just not, you can't do it until you get on that bike.
Right.
How do you ride a bike? You notice. You just notice. You're making adjustments. You're not doing it. Your body's doing it. Your body's just noticing and making adjustments, and eventually you start to ride that bike. Well, this is how you do this. Noticing, just noticing. Bringing yourself back to that comfortable state where you notice your diamond, and your diamond's from your heart. Your heart seems to be that connection. So going to your heart over and over again. When you're feeling calm, go to your heart. Then you do that 4%. Maybe go to a coffee shop, feeling your heart, breathing through your nose. And then you go to something else. See if you could work out breathing in and out through your nose, and sort of imagine in the back of your mind that you're breathing into your heart. What will happen is you start to create these habits, and these habits will escalate so that you can be in the midst of an anxious place, but not be anxious, because you've started to train your experiences, your body, to not go into that fight or flight when needed. Because trust me, when you need the fight or flight, it will be activated. It doesn't need any help.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll see. You'll get it whenever that bus is coming to you.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I love the breathing through the nose, because there are recent studies that show that breathing through your nose at night, especially, so like people use nose spray or have those little strips and stuff. If they're mouth breathers at night, if they start to breathe through their nose, instead, it actually lowers blood pressure and does a whole lot of really good things for your body. So, and then the other part of that is, making sure you're breathing out through your mouth if you're doing conscious breathing, so that you're giving out more oxygen than you're taking in, which then also combats that fight, flight, freeze, or faint response, whatever all the words are, whatever all the F words are that they're putting on that these days. But it's those breathing techniques are really good. And if you can practice that and practice all of this, it's that 4% better. If you're 4% better in all of these little areas, your body's just going to be used to being that 4% better in all these little areas, and it adds up pretty quick.
Compound interest.
Yeah.
World, right?
Yeah, exactly. You have a course targeted specifically towards teens. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, it's based on what I was talking about. I use a little less, provocative language,
Sure.
and not that much. I say poop. I say poop all the time. Poop, poop, poop. But it's based for teens solely because they're going through that social period, and
Yeah.
that's a really poignant time and a really important time for them to realize who they truly are and be comfortable in their skin, because their hormones are going like crazy on top of everything else. There's so much going on all at once. So to get them to sort of hone in on one little area, simplify, makes all the difference in the world. So it's a course that leads by itself. It's 8 sessions, and each session is like 20 minutes, and then a little bit of exercise. Again, I don't do too much, because of course the attention span goes pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And mine included. So I keep it very short but very succinct, and that's what we go through, is going through those different exercises and different understandings, so that their focus changes, their thermostat changes. It's the age-old thing. You can do all you want, but if you don't change the thermostat, the air conditioners or the heating is going to bring it back to that level, no matter what you do. So when you change your thermostat, your whole world starts to change. And that's what we do with the teens, is give them an understanding of who they are. They are the diamond, and all the other stuff is shit. Yeah, you can have some shit occasionally, and it's fun when you understand what it is. But when you don't, and when you think it's you, that's a major problem.
Yeah.
So we get them out of their story and get them into feeling comfortable in their skin. And as a consequence, they become assertive. And that's vitally important, going from aggressive or passive, which are very low energy, as I spoke about, low energy actions, to assertive, which is always a win-win. When a teenager or anybody is at an assertive level, they're constantly assertive. They're looking at what you want and what I want.
Yeah.
And how can we work this out? That's a beautiful thing. It really is a beautiful way of living. And that's what we teach in that course. So
I love it. I think people could benefit from that in general, not just teens. But I agree. I mean, teens are going through such this period of volatility in some cases, but also just learning. Like, they're just learning what it means to be a human, what it means to be a young adult, all of those things. And so anything we can do to support them, I think, is fantastic. So good job on that for sure. Are teens more prone to social anxiety, or do you think that has changed in recent years?
It's certainly changed in the fact of social media. When I was a kid, if I did something stupid, I'd get a lot of grief from people around me, and they might
whoever was there.
But a week later, they'd be onto something else, Now it could be on social media. It could be open to millions of people. It's hard to even fathom, isn't it? And that's such a scary sort of situation. On the other hand, what I found, and this is just my personal opinion, that generally kids are actually a little bit more nurturing to each other, a little bit less. Like, I found that people were very segregated when I was a kid. Again, I was in a certain area, so it wasn't necessarily everywhere. But they were very segregated and very, it's, I'm here, you're there, we're completely different, we're not even talking. But what I find now is that kids do interact a lot more, a lot better in one sense. Of course, there's always going to be bullying and the different things that we want to be aware of. But I find that kids are more aware of that now. And so there's pluses and minuses. I always loved, I can't remember who said it now, but somebody asked them about, what are we going to do? I mean, it's a terrible subject, but shootings and things like that. It's like, that never happened when I was a kid. And it's like, yeah, well, there were so many other things going on. There were so many things that have happened in the past that we've not really noticed or talked about. Whereas now everything is in our face. We see everything. So it seems more prominent. And some things are, of course. But other things seem to be getting better.
Yeah.
So the answer there is yes, and there are some positive parts to it as well. I think that people are finding more camaraderie now overall.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I see that in my kids because they've got all these friends and all different. I grew up in a very white town. As a matter of fact, whenever we were moving back down to my hometown area, I emailed the school districts in the area and I was like, hey, how do y'all feel about transgender? How does your staff treat kids who are transgender? And how do they treat kids who are neurodivergent in other ways? Like I have my 16-year-old is transgender. My 9-year-old has Tourette's. Like, how do y'all handle that? And the school district that I grew up in emailed back and said, we are very proud of our conservative views. All of our teachers are hired because of their conservative views. And we don't think pronouns should have any place in school. Like, they had a very awful response. And I was like, okay, I wasn't expecting that, but looking back at my own childhood, it tracks. And then the neighboring school district, which is where we wound up moving to, specifically because of their response to my questions, said we believe that a school environment is supposed to be a supportive environment. And they answered it, and they answered everything right. But Red Oak School District, where I grew up, and that's the one that had the terrible answer. It was very divisive, even though we were predominantly white. So it wasn't necessarily a whole bunch of different races, and it is different now. There are many races in Red Oak, and not just in the minority, but it's more of an equal split. But it's one of those things like, now you go to school and it's not at all racially segregated in any way or racially divided even, but you have, sophomores friends with seniors and like all this stuff is just so much more intermingled. It seems like whenever you go to these schools, it's like, okay, this person in band is friends with this person in football or whatever. And sure, there were those cases whenever I grew up, but they're way more frequent now, which I think is great. And that's really, it's really neat to see that kids have grown since I was a kid.
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So there are some pluses, thank goodness.
Yes. I definitely agree. Joy says, I wonder if the moving to more fitting districts made the major difference. Listen, I literally made the decision on where we bought a house based on responses from the school districts in the area. So, their city lost out on things. And my dad graduated there. I graduated there. My grandma taught in their schools. And I was just like, yeah, I'm not moving back there. I'm sorry. It's not happening. So getting back, look, I get sidetracked and distracted all the time. I'm going to bring us back over here talking about social anxiety specifically. How can schools or educators provide better support to teens who are struggling with social anxiety?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to realize that we work in education and at different schools and so on. And it's amazing how when we bring this subject up, they're looking at, for obvious reasons, most people would, they're looking at the symptom and not the cause. Mm-hmm. So again, I'm not against medication, but the medication is it's treating the symptom. It's not treating the cause. Again, it's a controversial subject, but social anxiety is not a chemical problem. It can create a chemical imbalance, which anything can. If I shout now, I won't. But if I shouted and you jumped, you would get a chemical imbalance. You would get a chemical imbalance.
Yeah.
Right? So generally, I know there are exceptions to that rule, but generally it is not a chemical imbalance.
Not chemically
So you're
driven. Yeah.
treating the symptom, not the cause.
Mm-hmm.
So that saying do not use medication? No, sometimes it's necessary because they are so anxious that it's necessary to just allow them to have a normal life while they treat the cause. So what is the cause? The cause is understanding, or the cause is not understanding that they are the diamond. It is not understanding that all that crap that's around them, all that shit, is not them. It's not them. It is absolutely not them. It is an illusion. And so if through education, they can really just tap them back to the diamond. Look, you are perfectly you. Here's the thing. It's like people do crazy stuff. Are you supposed to say, well, you are the diamond, so we'll just let you off. You can do whatever you want? No. But you treat the behavior, or you punish the behavior, let's say. You do not punish the person. What I mean by that is you never put a person down. You put their behavior down, that's not good. You know, like I'm sure you do, you know, with your kids, you know, there has to be rules, there has to be, you know, consequences. There's consequences to your actions, but you never put the person down. And so that works the other way too. You never want to go into that crap and start delving into it, because now you're making it a thing. So the more you can just drop back and say, you are perfectly you. You've just got these crazy beliefs and blah, blah, blah. Let's get rid of those beliefs. Not let's sort you out. Not you're broken, let's fix you. No, you are fine. You are perfectly you. Let's work on those behaviors.
Yeah.
Now, maybe let's use some medication, but you know that you are okay. The medication is a temporary thing to allow your body to just relax. The more we get out of here, the fight or flight only lasts 5 minutes. So if we get out of our heads, sometimes, yes, medication can help that. But with this understanding, you won't keep repeating that fight or flight over and over again. So that's what I would say in the education is that one misunderstanding. We don't want to focus the person as the crap, as the shit. That is not who they are. It's a big difference when you're dealing with your beliefs, not you.
Yeah.
Huge difference.
And that can make a big difference in a classroom too. If you're sitting there saying, you know, why are you such a bad kid? Or why are you so disruptive? Or all this stuff, instead of saying, hey, when you yelled in class, it really disrupted everything. Can we not do that again? Like, you know, just saying what you did was not right, but not saying you are not right. That it makes such a difference. And that's parenting, teaching, both, all, everything. It's not that the child is a bad child. It's that their actions aren't acceptable. And I talk about that a lot with my kids about, hey, here's why we don't do that. And here's what happens when you do that. Now, there are some consequences to your actions. You know, you put all of our forks in the trash and now you have to get them all out and clean them, like whatever. You didn't want to empty the dishwasher. And now you're emptying the trash. So, or whatever it is, but it's never, you know, how could you be so stupid or something like that? Because that's not the message that you want to send. You really want to send a message of, hey, what you did wasn't good. Not that you're not good. What you did was not good. And here's how we're going to address it now. And here's how we're going to hopefully prevent it in the future. But doing something like that in a classroom can make a huge difference in getting a kid to trust their teacher too. Like if you have a teacher who's shown that they're willing to look past your actions and see you for who you are and work with you on meeting you where you are, you're much more likely to get a better result in the classroom. So
yeah, And that's unconditional love. Because I find that people misinterpret unconditional love. They think, oh, if I'm unconditionally loving, people will just walk over me, so if I'm unconditionally loving to my kids, they will be chaotic, They will put the TV in the trash can, let alone forks or whatever. But it's not the case. You unconditionally love your kids. Whatever they do, you'll still love them.
Yep.
You might give them a clip around the ear hole. No, you won't do that. You give them consequences for their behavior. But the love is always there because you're still loving the person.
Yeah.
And we want to do that for ourselves. Whether we're socially anxious or not, we want to be unconditionally loving of ourselves. That does not mean we don't have consequences for our own behavior.
Absolutely.
Because people think if I'm unconditionally loving, that's, I won't do anything. I won't get anything accomplished. I've got to be hard on myself. No, you don't. Just think about how amazing you feel when you're unconditionally loved. You give that to yourself, you will be comfortable in your skin. And social anxiety, I'm not saying it goes like that, but it will just start to dissipate. And sometimes it really does just go like that because it just has no place.
Yeah.
When you're unconditionally loving of self. The beauty of it is, again, another misconception that I forgot was we're told to look at the person that we're speaking to, right? Rather than ourselves. But unfortunately, remember I said about faking it till you make it. What happens is we're pretending to focus on that person while internally we're thinking, oh my God, am I going to say the wrong thing? They're going to think I'm crazy or whatever it is, right? We're fearing that judgment. But when we're unconditionally loving of ourselves, we don't need to look to ourselves. We're already okay. What happens? We naturally want to interact with the person that's in front of us. We want them to feel this unconditional love. We want them to feel good. But we naturally, it becomes, instead of an application, right, think about the person, ask them questions, and then they feel like they're being interrogated, We're well-meaning, but it comes across too fake. It comes across too needy. But when we're unconditionally loving, we're naturally inquisitive. How are you doing? We ask them that and we mean it, not good, how are you? the quick response, it's like, good, how are you? And then move on to whatever else it is. We're naturally curious. We're naturally wanting to interact. It's an implication as opposed to an application.
Yeah.
Makes such a difference.
Yeah, it really does. Oh, I've talked about this before, but kind of going back to the communication piece also of whenever you are talking to someone, especially in like a networking situation or in a relationship or something, or with your kids, literally just anything. Whenever you're talking to someone, talk to listen to what they're saying. Don't be getting your response together in your head. Get all of your information together and then respond. Don't respond in your head. You're trying to put everything together. You're going to miss what they're talking about. That's one of those things that just goes, I try to get that with my kids all the time. Like, don't be listening to respond. Be listening to really hear them. And that active listening piece of, okay, now while you're figuring out your response, repeat back to them what they said so that they know that you understood and they can correct anything that you misheard or anything like that. And that's where you have that time to respond back in. But that's just active listening. But yeah, I mean, look, my kids know that I love them.
The way you say just. That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just active listening.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I mean, my kids know absolutely that I unconditionally love them. They also know if they do murder anyone, because like I said, I watch a lot of true crime stuff, and my kids like it. And they've asked me before, you say you love me no matter what. well, what if I killed someone? I'm like, I would call the police, but I would still love you.
There you go. Consequences,
Yeah.
but the love never dies. The love
Exactly.
never dies.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll absolutely still love you, but yeah, there are consequences. 100%. Oh, yeah. Active listening, 48, you're exactly right. Active listening is a lot of work and it takes a lot of practice. And it's not something that we are raised to do. It's not something we're taught to do. I didn't learn how to really actively listen until I got into my field of work and we went through a client exercise where it was like, okay, when you're talking to a client, there's this listen, act, nope. Listen, nope. I don't remember the letters. All right.
Right.
It's an active listening exercise that we did. It's LAER. I don't remember what it is. It doesn't matter what it is, but
You put it into action at least.
yeah, but there wasn't ever, I was never taught anything like that in school, never taught anything like that by my parents, nowhere until then. And then it came up after I learned it again and again in different contexts. So,
Well, here's the thing. Again, as you said, I didn't see who said that, but said that active listening is hard work. And it is. It is hard work. And like I said before, the real key is to get that unconditional love for self. And as much as we think, hey, I love myself, you'd be surprised. Do we really unconditionally love self? Now, we can unconditionally love our kids. It sort of doesn't always, but it tends to be automatic, and we can unconditionally love our kids and not unconditionally love ourselves. And it's not an action. It's not an action. It's a feeling. It's a sense. It's a state. It's an energy. And when we unconditionally love ourselves, active listening becomes a part of our life. And it's no longer this tough idea of, okay, I've got to really focus. Because where are we focusing? We're focusing in our heads. When we're unconditionally loving and we're coming from our heart, I always say we think, right? But then we think about what we're thinking. And then we think about what we're thinking about what we're thinking. And then we're thinking about what we're thinking about thinking about thinking about what we're thinking. And by the end of it, we're so in this mass of thinking that we're not even a part of ourselves anymore.
yeah.
And then we're interacting with somebody else who's thinking about what we're thinking. And now it's our thinking talking to their thinking. And we're not even involved. We're not nowhere near involved with each other. We're completely separate.
Yeah.
But when you talk heart to heart, I know it sounds very cliche and very sort of woo-woo, but it's the truth. It really is. You can talk heart to heart. Have you ever had a sort of semi-conversation with somebody who doesn't even speak English? But they know, you feel them, you know, okay, they're making sort of weird hand signals and stuff, but you sort of know, you can interact with a person. They say that a person, you sort of get a feel for a person within, 2 seconds? Literally, that fast, 2 seconds, because, again, my wording, we're great bullshit detectors. We are phenomenal. We don't need a lie detector machine. We can tell. We won't know what they're lying about, but we'll know there's an incongruency there somewhere. That's how you know if a person can come in and you can sort of feel, are they confident or are they not, or self-esteem or not. Because there'll be certain signals that you can't hide. You can pretend to be confident, fake it till you make it. But then there's certain body little ticks and so on that give you away, and we sense it. So when you are loving of self, and that bit takes practice, just going within, coming from the heart, breathing into the heart, loving self. Sounds really weird, but it's so powerful. You'll find that you are naturally actively listening because you're not conscious of self.
Right.
So who else are you going to listen to, right? When you're not conscious of self, why would you be anxious about what people think about you? You're already loving of self, so you've filled up. So now all you're doing is just really curious and enjoying the company of others.
Yeah.
Makes life so much simpler.
It does. It does. If you can do it, it does.
Well, I mean,
go ahead.
I would say that was probably the most important thing that you could ever do in your life.
Yeah. It's worth working on, for sure. I know that we've talked about the breathing through your heart and the nose breathing and everything, but are there any social anxiety self-exercises that you think that everyone could benefit from, even if they don't struggle with social anxiety or deal with social anxiety themselves? Do you think that there's something that everyone could benefit from more often?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I spoke about the nose breathing, which I just think that is phenomenal for anybody. Absolutely anybody to get into that habit. They also have the tapes that they go like this, like crisscross around your mouth.
Yes.
You forced, or to breathe through your nose at night makes a big difference. So
Not
that
if you have a cold. Don't do it if you have.
But also, there's a method of breathing. It's 4-4-4-4. And the military use this, the elite military use this. But now I find out that even kindergarten is teaching this, which is fantastic. What a fantastic thing to learn at such a young age. And the 4-4-4, it's very simple. You breathe in for 4, so 4 seconds. You just count for 4. You hold it for 4. Then you breathe out for 4, and then you hold the out breath for 4. And you just continuously use that. Now you can do that anytime. You could do that while sitting, talking with, well, not talking because you wouldn't be able to, but listening to somebody, right? You can do that. You can do that while walking. You can do that while just sitting down, while watching TV. You can do that at any moment. If you're driving to a place, you can do that 4-4-4-4 breathing. And again, it brings you back to that parasympathetic, so that rest and digest. It's so good if you've got a business meeting or you've just got a stressful day. This can actually help you just relax. Remember, it's our mindset that makes our life. We think it's our life that makes our mindset, but it's actually our mindset that makes our life. Again, it comes from the inside out. So when we can relax in any moment in time, and we can get that as our normality, as a normal way of being, our life will start working out a heck of a lot better. I can't say it will be phenomenal, but it will definitely work out a heck of a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's research behind that box breathing also, the 4-4-4-4 breathing. Because it's another one that can lower blood pressure because you're making sure that you are exhaling the same amount that you're inhaling, which is a problem that a lot of people have. They're inhaling more than they exhale. And Tib, that's a really good question. Do people like smoking because it's kind of like a deep breath? Because there is also research on breathing and smokers, very similar to the breathing through the nose and the box breathing that I'm talking about. Because when you take a drag off a cigarette, you inhale, and then you exhale more than you inhaled because you're getting everything back out of your lungs. And so that is one of the reasons that people like smoking, besides the nicotine addiction, which is not good. Don't smoke. I don't encourage smoking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the disclaimers, but
you get the same effect. Right?
Yeah. So it's one of those things that's the kind of the thing with smoking, is that they have talked about that reset of your breathing that comes with smoking sometimes. But you don't have to smoke to do that. You can do something like four square breathing. So
yeah. I mean, there's so many. Like we think that alcohol calms us, which we think it does, but it actually doesn't at all. The breathing would actually be a lot better than taking a shot of alcohol or something like that.
Yeah.
It's amazing how we get fooled a lot of the times by these different, drugs and different things that we think are doing some good for us when we can actually just get the same benefits simply by breathing.
Mm-hmm.
What a difference. And again, it's the most important thing for us. The more we can stay in this beautiful, calm state, so many benefits. There's such a theme here, right? That's what we're pointing back to every time, whether it's social anxiety or any anxiety or any worry or any ailments in the system. Imagine how much better your body will work when it's in a rest and digest state for most of the time compared to an anxious state.
Yeah.
There's no question it's going to be a good thing. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. And you're right. I mean, we do things like drink alcohol or smoke when it's something that you can get a better result without, if you know what to do. So I hope that our conversation tonight has helped with some of that. It is time for our magic moment. So I have this very lovely magic wand here. If you could wave this magic wand and eliminate one common opinion, misconception, or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health, what would it be?
Ooh. You say that again? I'm just kidding.
I can. I say it every week.
Right. So waving a magic wand, what would it be? It would be, for sure, the misconception, breaking that misconception, and getting people to really understand, really realize that you are perfectly you. Mm. So you can break habits, you can break beliefs, you can break anything that's going wrong in your life, but you're still perfectly you. That's the magic one. That would be life-changing for everybody.
Yeah, it really would. That just self-acceptance and self-love would be incredible. If you could just click, done. Yeah. Well, if anybody else has any questions for our guest or anything, feel free to pop them into the chat. I'm going to post your socials one more time in the chat as well for people who might want to connect, and that is going to include the free happiness toolkit that I was missing at the beginning. I have it now. It's right here. So if y'all want to connect with Lee at all, feel free to click on any of these and find him where he can be found. Lee, is there anything else you want to cover while we're here? Any resources or sites or anything that we didn't get to talk about?
Resources and sites. Well, I think I want to leave with a message, and this is going to be a resource. And that is to think about when we talked about getting yourself to that state. One thing I didn't mention was you also tap into what's called the zone. And the zone is where we also have our inner GPS. So if you think about anxiety, what is it? It's an overwhelm. It's a stress. So we find it very difficult to make decisions. Whereas when we calm ourselves down, we actually go into our intuition. So that's the resource. Not only are you calming your mind, you're helping your body, you're lowering your blood pressure and getting rid of anxiety. But you're also tapping into your own inner GPS. And I love the GPS. I love the GPS on my car, let alone in my body. It's just the most amazing thing because you always know you're on track. Mm-hmm. You always know you're going in the right direction. So that's my resource.
I love that. That's really cool. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. Bite Mark says, thank you so much for being here. I learned a lot and have new tools to use. And I echo that. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lee. I appreciate the conversation. It was wonderful.
It was great fun.
Absolutely.
I want to call you Mama, but it's like ridiculous because I'm like 20 years old. It sounds a bit strange, doesn't it?
Listen, everybody's got a mama. Everybody can also have another mama if they want one, but Foxfire's fine too.
Oh, fantastic. And I'm so glad that we had the same shirt.
Me too. I think that's wonderful. Okay, chat, give me just a minute. I'm going to disconnect with Lee and I'll be back in just a moment with some minion masters. And Lee, thank you again so much. This was just an absolute
everybody.
blast. I hope that our exploration of social anxiety and strategies to kick the bullshit out of it has provided you with valuable insights and inspiration. Remember, social anxiety is a common challenge that many people face, but it doesn't have to define your life. Seek support from mental health professionals, engage in self-care practices, and practice the techniques we discussed to gradually overcome your fears and regain control. I invite you to continue the conversation on social anxiety by sharing your thoughts and experiences with me on social media or through our website, tacosfallapart.org. And if you found this episode helpful or informative, please consider leaving a review and rating on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us reach more people who could benefit from this information. Thank you for joining me today on Even Tacos Fall Apart. I'm here to remind you that you're not alone in your journey. There is hope for a brighter and more confident future. We have the power within us to rise above our fears and live a life that is authentic and fulfilling. And if you find yourself struggling or feeling hopeless, remember that even tacos fall apart and we still love tacos. Until next time, take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, and continue to kick the bullshit out of social anxiety.